First of all, Celeste, I want to really thank you for coming and presenting to Democrats Abroad. I'm proud to say that Celeste Delgado is a member of Democrats Abroad Sevilla, a valuable member, and we really enjoyed working together on the protests that we did here at the end in March. It was fabulous. She was fabulous. Celeste is a full-time environmental activist. She's a former professor. She's a speaker for Beyond Plastics. Her passion for the environment started, if I understand correctly, in about 1988 when she started as a guide in Doñana National Park, which is a real gem that we have here down in Andalusia. And she also hosts a regular radio show in Andalusia as well. Spanish is her native language, but as you will see, you wouldn't know it because she's bilingual, at least bilingual, and apparently speaks a little Italian too. So thank you, Celeste, for taking time this afternoon to speak to Democrats Abroad in Spain. We really appreciate it. And now I will turn it over to you, and I will mute myself.
Well, thank you all so much for inviting me. This is the third talk that I've given this year in English, in fact, all of them in English. I have done 15 or 16 of them in English and in Spanish, and every talk I give, I consider a great opportunity for change. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen, and if you want to communicate with me, I will probably not see the messages in the chat. So maybe hold the questions until the end, or just, pipe up and say, hey, we can't hear you, or we have a question. But let me get started sharing my screen. All right. Let's see. This down, play. Okay. All right. So as Helen said, I have been working with Beyond Plastics, and they are the ones who trained me. I took 2 classes with them. My background has nothing to do with the environment or science or anything like that. I used to teach Spanish in the US, and I moved to Spain a couple of years ago, and I realized that people here don't know much about plastics. So I decided to put this talk together. So let's get started. What are we going to see today? Basically, we're going to have 3 parts to this talk. We're going to talk about plastics and their additives and 3 aspects, what they are, a very brief history, and the impacts on the environment in general, but mostly on human health. And this is all just to put everybody on the same page. Then we're going to go into plastic recycling, which is the big thing for me. The reason why I started doing this talk, because I thought there was a lot of misinformation about plastic recycling. So the same deal, what it is, a brief history, and what the problems are associated with plastics. And then the third part is the shortest one, and the one in which you will have to do something. What can we do? I want you to leave with a green heart, with hope. I'm going to say really horrible things, and you may have heard many of them because fortunately or unfortunately, the news lately has been mentioning all kinds of issues about plastics, which is a huge difference from the past. And then at the end, we can have time for questions, comments, etc. All right. So plastic is a synthetic material, as we all know. It consists of polymers, long chains of carbon molecules and other molecules that are strongly bonded. And that is a big deal because they're very hard. They don't tend to break up easily or break down easily. And that's one problem. And the other problem are the chemical additives that give the polymers all those properties that we like. And those are those little dots that I put on the image. They are not strongly bonded. In fact, they can leach out very easily. And that is also a big problem. Those additives are necessary for the plastic to have the stuff that we want in plastics, to make them into different shapes, to make them flexible or hard, to resist high temperatures or low temperatures, to be flame retardant, lightweight, etc. And also, they are cheap. Plastics are cheap, theoretically. So yeah, we have quite a love relationship with plastic. We all do. We use plastic all the time for almost everything in our lives. But that relationship is actually quite toxic and it's actually not cheap. And this is what I think is one of the most important messages that I want to give today. So if you look around wherever you are, you will see that there is plastic everywhere. I usually, when I give this talk in person, I usually tell the people to just look around and imagine the room without all the stuff that is made out of plastic, and what would happen, what would we see if it all disappeared. And one of the things that we would see is our naked bodies, because our clothes contain plastic as well, even the ones that are sold as natural products, natural fibers and such. So all those things come from fossil fuels. 98% of it comes from fossil fuels. So our backpacks were born here. This thing that I'm using to communicate with you, the headphones, well, our phones, glasses, anything. My contacts are made out of plastic that was born somewhere like that, but I don't have to see that, right? And so that connection is so remote that is part of the problem. We don't get to see why what we have, what we use constantly, is problematic. When was it invented? The first one I usually ask my audiences, and they tend to say that the 20th century, but the first one was invented in the mid 19th century, and it was celluloid. And I think most of us here are of a certain age, so we know that celluloid is what they had in movies, what they did put movies on, right? And it was made out of cellulose, out of trees, and it was created for a good reason, so that they could use this plastic instead of the tusks from elephants, because it took a whole elephant, 2 tusks, to make a set of billiards balls. So that was a good thing, theoretically. The first truly synthetic from a fossil fuel plastic was Bakelite, and I put a little phone there. It was invented in 1907. That is the most like our plastics, although there are many different types of plastics, and that kind of doesn't look like the plastic that we know today. So this love affair that we have with plastics, when did it start? Like many things in our current society, it kind of started, or it took off in during World War II. When I talk about plastics, for the most part, I'm talking about the U.S. The U.S. is the leader in plastic production and invention, and etc. So during the war, the production increased in 300%. Then it was, after the war, it was used to replace everything. Basically, little by little, it replaced everything: metal, paper, wood. And then in the 60s, it became the symbol of modernity. This is an actual ad from the 60s. Disposable, desechable, became the in word, right? And this was sold as a way to liberate women from the chores of cleaning and all that stuff. So keep this in mind as we go through the presentation. Plastic was invented to be thrown away, without keeping in mind, without considering that away does not really exist. I like the expression in English, to throw away. In Spanish, we don't have anything similar, because we don't have the word away, but there is no away. Like you probably have seen in many demonstrations, there is no away. You can't throw things away. So when did this love relationship start to sour? It was in the 60s as well. People started to notice that there was more and more plastic in the oceans, but also on land. Rachel Carson, many of you probably know of this book, published Silent Spring, which was a huge bestseller at the time. But I have to say, I lived in the States for 31 years, starting in 1992. And I think it was only in the last 10 years of my being there, and even though I was an environmental activist and I was involved in all these things, I had never heard of it. And most younger people that I ask, they have not heard of it. So she denounced the dangers of synthetic pesticides, which are also a fossil fuel product. And basically, if you read it again today, everything she said is applicable today, much worse, in fact. So part of the reason why no one hears about it is that, well, the fossil fuel industry did a good job of suppressing all this information. In 1969, there were these two huge events, the Santa Barbara oil spill, which is still the third largest to date in the US, and the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. So people started to freak out, and that led to protests, pushback. How are things now? As we know, we are completely dependent on plastic. That is just a fact. I'm not going to go into any of that. But how are the problems? What is the data out there of the problems that plastics are causing in the environment, for example? I used to have a long list of numbers, this much percent, the 5 gyres, the 5 plastic gyres in the ocean. But I think that actually photographs are much better images. So I'm going to show you a few, which you may have seen. I just got them from Google. So there are young people who live in this kind of environment who are basically doomed. But not all these images are from faraway places. Some of them are from near us. These are plastic pellets that washed on land in Galicia last year, January of last year. And oh, here we go. This is my town, Sanlúcar la Mayor. This is where I live. And I moved here 2 years ago from Florida. And I took this photo before I even moved here. I had come to visit. This is a normal day. The trash people, collectors will come, take this away. And the next day it will be just like that. And this is not an oddity. This is, there's a lot of trash here. There are a lot of bins. There are other places where there are not so many, but this is normal. This is a normal level for Sanlúcar. Now, if you look at this graph, this was done in 2021. The data are usually difficult to come by. It's very slow as they put it out. So more than half of all the plastic ever produced globally in the world had been made 56% by 2021. Right now, we are in 2025. And the expectation is that by the year 2050, it will basically triple. And this is not just some speculation. These are projections by the fossil fuel industry. They want to do this. So if you remember those photographs that I showed you, just triple that. And that is the way we're going to live. Because if there were a way to manage all this trash, we would have used it. We would have done something about it by now, right? So we haven't done it. We probably won't do anything about it if the levels increase 3 times. So should we be worried about this plastic? A rhetorical question, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. So there are 3 parts to this. Plastics are dangerous in every phase, every single one of their phases. Extraction and manufacture are dangerous, obviously, because they cause cancer and diseases in people who work nearby, people who live nearby, who happen to be, of course, less affluent communities. They generate air, soil, and water pollution. They generate CO2, of course, contribute to global warming, which contributes to climate chaos, which we are experiencing vividly lately. Just a little bit of information here. The plastics industry generates 4 times the amount of greenhouse gas emissions as the airline sector. So they keep telling us, don't fly so much. And I honestly don't fly so much. I try not to fly, but plastics are doing much worse than people flying, going to visit their families or traveling for work. And they also worsen the impact of all planetary boundaries. If you don't know what those are, I'll be talking about that a little bit later. Some people I've experienced in my presentations haven't heard of them, and we need to hear of those. So that is the extraction and manufacture. Now, using plastic or simply being exposed to plastic is dangerous. And it is virtually unavoidable. If you live in the 21st century, you cannot avoid plastics because it's everywhere in clouds and rain. The rain that we got today, it contained plastics that we got today in Sanlúcar, in Seville. It's in animals, it's in plants, it's everywhere in the Mariana Trench, in the Himalayas, everywhere where they have looked, they have found plastics. And it's inside us. So we're surrounded in and out. In every single organ where they have looked, they have found plastics. So we are breathing it, we are eating it and drinking it, and we are getting it inside our bodies through our skin. So this is a problem because plastics degrade but don't biodegrade, and instead they turn into microplastics, which I have read recently that they want to change this name for the name plastic shards, because that's what they really are. Microplastic sounds like, oh, it's kind of a little thing. It can't be that bad. But there are plastic shards. They have sharp edges, or nanoplastics, which we can't see. And of course, these two, once they reach the environment, they're extremely difficult to remove, as you can imagine. In addition to all of this, there are more than 16,000 additives. This is data that I had last year when I started making these talks, but I have heard that actually it's probably closer to 100,000 additives that I was talking about. And about half of them have not been tested or regulated because the law does not require in the industry to test on human beings, which would be extremely difficult to do. So they can just churn out different products, and if there are problems, then they'll deal with that problem. But not until then, it's okay. They can just go ahead and produce all these items, all these additives. So of these either 16,000 or 100,000 additives, 4,200 are considered chemicals of concern for sure. We know that they are problematic. And then we know that some cause cancer, some mess with our endocrine system, and some are neurotoxicants. And I'm going to go into these 3 categories in a little bit, but I'm going to show you maybe a few headlines lately that tell us where we find plastics and how we get it. So we know that our brains contain plastic, a spoon's worth, they say. The brain is, for some reason, a place that plastics like a lot. They say fatty tissue. Not sure exactly, but anyway, plastic in our brains. There is more, 50% more than 8 years ago, in the rate of accumulation is correlated with the rate of prevalence of plastic in our environment. So if you remember the graph, which, by the way, I did not mention when I showed you the year 2000, right? 56%, more than 56% of all the plastic created in our world has been created in the last 25 years. Keep that number in mind, 25 years. All right, so here are a few sources of micro and nanoplastics and toxicants. If you eat seafood, 99% of it contains plastic. I stopped eating seafood for other reasons, but now I'm glad about that. And I love it. I love seafood. If you eat from takeout containers, you are ingesting plastics. And if you heat it, that if you heat the container in the microwave, you are increasing your chances of getting plastics or additives. For some reason, I left this one here in Spanish. If you drink tea in plastic bags, they do have many of them, not all of them, but many of them have microplastics that you will then drink up. I have arrows pointing to all the dates of publication of these headlines because it just amazes me that all these pieces of news are coming out so much lately. Like there was a time when you could barely hear about this stuff, and now it's all the time. I have to keep updating this presentation all the time. In fact, I gave it on Monday and I had to make a change, and I'll tell you which one it is. If you chew gum, unless you buy gum that specifically says it doesn't contain plastic, you are chewing plastic. If you swallow it, you are eating plastic. If you bought a new car like I did when I moved to Spain and it smelled fumey and all that stuff, some people like the smell, some people hate it. Well, and that smell, those fumes are carcinogenic flame retardants that are in the seed foam. And as the car ages, the fumes stop escaping all that the car, but still you are always exposed to it. And one thing that I learned recently is that when you leave your car in the sun and it heats up, fumes are worse. So remember, if you're going to park in Seville, somewhere in the sun, leave a crack open and open the car up before you get in, air it out, because otherwise you will be breathing in fumes, carcinogenic fumes. Forever chemicals, PFAS, that are found in many places, in water, actually, in the water they have found it. PFAS are also the type of additives that they use for Teflon, for example, to make it non-stick. And they are called forever chemicals because they just don't break down. Well, there are some smartwatch wristbands that contain them, that we know of. Probably there are probably many other items that we use on a daily basis that contain them. For example, cosmetics. Women have a higher rate of different diseases, cancers and such, because, well, we have been told that we are imperfect and we need to perfect ourselves by using perfumes, cosmetics and such. Now the final frontier is men. They're trying to convince men that they're imperfect and they need to use all kinds of things, nail polish and, makeup and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, we are just spreading. We're becoming more democratic in that sense. If you use earplugs, like on the plane, for example, or the train, they give you earplugs so that you don't hear noises. They're made out of PVC. They are a health hazard, so don't use them. And so those are things that we use on a regular basis, but sometimes perversely we get sick, right? And we need to get medical attention, and some of the stuff that we need to take comes in these bags that are made out of all kinds of plastics, PP, PE, PVC, etc. We're going to see some of the plastics later, the types of plastics. So, well, according to this study, a 250 milliliter medical infusion bag can release up to 7,500 microplastics particles straight into our blood. So, I mean, it's crazy. The Guardian does a lot of stuff about plastics. I follow it religiously. And this woman wrote this piece that is actually quite funny. She did not want to write this piece, but she was told she had to. So she tried to go for a month without plastics, and it was not a pleasant experience. You may have seen also there are some projects out there. Some of them are a few years old. People trying to to not use plastics and put all the plastic they use in a jar or something like that, or the opposite, wearing all the plastic that they use in their lives and going out. There was this guy, I think it was in New York, who was wearing all kinds of bags when he went out in the world. Actually, from this photo, it just impresses me that that seems like a very small amount of plastic to use for a month. I try to avoid plastic, but I'm sure I use more than that. I'm pretty sure that I do more than that. All right, so let's go into the three aspects of our health that are impacted by these additives and the plastics. So bisphenols and phthalates are plasticizers. They're used in many items that we use on a daily basis. For example, the water bottles that we use, plastic water bottles. And bisphenols are, for example, if you have ever bought something that says BPA free, that B is for bisphenol. And well, that's it may be BPA free, but it's not carcinogenically free because they may have substituted. This is called a regrettable substitution. I told you that they don't have to test things before they put them on in the market. So they substituted bisphenol S, and it's just as bad. So these are additives. These two are additives, and PFAS are also additives. Polyvinyl chloride, PVC, is a polymer. Actually, it's a plastic itself. And then there is styrene, which is a monomer that combined gives us polystyrene, the styrofoam cups that many of us use. Or, for example, in Spain, I have seen it in stores with in some stores, you can only buy meat or fish in these styrofoam trays that are known carcinogens. So there's this piece from The Guardian, even though I usually like it. Well, okay, so it says cancer cases in under 50s and people under 50 worldwide have been up in 80% in the last 3 decades. Remember, I said 25 years ago. In the last 25 years, plastic production has exploded. So people who are under 50 are having cancer in higher rates in the last 3 decades. Cancers that we should have, or old people should have, right? Or old people used to have, now in younger people. And in this article, they say that the authors are not sure what the factors are contributing to this. Usually it's not just one factor, but they mention poor diets, alcohol, tobacco use, physical inactivity, and obesity. Like it's a lifestyle choice, right? So you could exercise more, or you could stop smoking, or you could stop drinking and eat better, and then you wouldn't have these cancers. But they don't mention the fact that we are actually taking in all this plastic and all these additives, and we don't have a choice in many cases. Let's move on to the endocrine disruptors. The endocrine system regulates many important functions in our body. And the problem with some of these additives is that they mimic our hormones. So let's look at first what it does to our metabolism. There are higher rates, or there's a correlation between these additives and obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. And this is the piece that I had to integrate today, because it's that I had to change from the presentation I did on Monday, because it's from yesterday, actually. So the New York Times says that there's this paper that linked phthalates, I mentioned them earlier, found in many plastics, the plastic bottles, for example, to 350,000 deaths globally, with caveats, it says there, right? So this is a study from 2018, because of course it always takes a long time to get these things going. So it estimated that 13% of cardiovascular deaths among 55 to 64-year-olds worldwide were connected to phthalates. There's always the use of the word correlation rather than causation, cause and effect, because it's very difficult to establish 100% cause and effect between a plastic or an additive and a disease or a condition. And this is something that the plastics industry has used to undermine the reputation of many of the researchers and such. So anyway, this is what they've discovered, and then experts agreed that phthalates are harmful, but they said that they had to rely on complex statistical modeling and a series of assumptions and estimates that make it difficult to conclude exactly which death is connected to the phthalates, or if there are any other factors. Usually there are many other factors. Another problem that researchers have when they're dealing with plastics is that there is no control group. Well, there are two problems. One, you can't really test. You can't really give a poison to a person or a group of people and in order to do a study on purpose, right? You have to test on animals. So, and there's always that. Yeah, it's bad for animals, but is it bad for humans? And then there is also the problem that we can't have a control group because everybody right now has plastic in their bodies, even people who live in the Amazon. So there's no way you can compare the effects of a product that is present in the entire population. So let's move on to reproduction, and this is really, really scary. These are the different diseases that have been correlated to the presence of plastics and additives. We do know that there is greater infertility rates worldwide, well, in the global north, lower sperm counts. Many people are having difficulties conceiving. We also know that girls are having their periods earlier and earlier. And there is this book by Shanna Swan. She's a great scientist. She did this is like a summary of or a compendium of all the studies that were available until 2021, and she's still updating all of this. The subtitle is How Our Modern World is Threatening Sperm Counts, Altering Male and Female Reproductive Development, and Imperiling the Future of the Human Race. This, by the way, is also what Silent Spring by Rachel Carson dealt with, right? Altering male and female reproductive development. We're still doing the same thing. There is this news from CNN. This is from last year. The US fertility rate dropped to its slowest rate in a century in 2023. Oh, well, just recently, they had another one. US fertility hovers near record low. And of course, now Trump, as you must have heard for sure, is going to try to get all women pregnant. Probably not himself, but so children and pregnant women are especially vulnerable because, well, children are developing, and especially and pregnant women have their immune systems could be compromised much more easily. So here we have an increase in all these events or situations: premature birth, low birth weight, birth defects, impaired lung growth, and also childhood cancer. Sadly, okay, 1 in 10 premature births are linked to plastics chemicals. And perversely, like I mentioned earlier, so if you have a premature child, they take it and they put it in the NICU, and what do? They just put plastic tubes in order to save this child. But at the same time, they are injecting plastic chemicals into the children. Okay, and this is just for kind of a comic relief. This is my hope that now that microplastics have been discovered in penises and maybe related to erectile dysfunction, maybe now there is a hope that the people in the industry will decide, oh, we need to do something about it. In the meantime, if it's just children and pregnant women, who cares, right? Or old people. Okay, so we have done cancers and we have done endocrine disruptors, and now we're moving on to neurotoxicants, which are really scary as well. So there has been an increase, an increase in lower IQ. So there has been a decrease in IQ, and this is very scary because I don't know if you remember back in the day when there was a generation whose IQ was lower because of lead in paint and such. Lower IQ is bad for people, but it's also bad for the economy because it has a direct impact on the economy, which is what everybody in the industry cares about. There's also an increase in autism spectrum disorders, it seems like. This is a really scary headline. Autism prevalence has increased 317% since, again, 2000, the year 2000, the last 25 years, the last 3 decades. So some of this increase may be attributable to the fact that the screening and the definition of autism spectrum has changed, but not all of it can be attributed to that. There's also an increase in ADHD, and maybe there is a correlation with Parkinson's. This is a study from 2023. They may be setting the stage for Parkinson's risk. All right. So we have done extraction and manufacture. We have done use and exposure, which affects us all. And now we go to the last part, which is disposal. What happens when plastic reaches the end of its life? So it could end up in the environment where it just harms everything it touches, basically. It could end up incinerated and cause pollution and have gases, greenhouse gases, et cetera, et cetera. It could end up in landfills where it releases methane, which is a stronger greenhouse, I always have a problem with this word, greenhouse gas, than CO2, but it actually lasts less in the environment, less time, so it's not as problematic. And also it bleaches out to the surrounding area. So in a landfill, any surrounding area in a landfill is compromised. And then there is also recycling, which we're going to go into later. And then in general, the disposal worsens the impact of all planetary boundaries. And what are those things? So the Stockholm Resilience Center came up with, I think it was 6 planetary boundaries a number of years ago. And they decided that if these boundaries were exceeded, and so you can see it's where, as long as we may keep ourselves within the green space, we're okay. But if we exceed one of those boundaries, the future of humanity is compromised. That was 6 was a number of years ago. Now, then they revised it. Now they have established that there are 9 planetary boundaries. And some of them are well known to everyone, like climate change. That's the one we hear most about. Or the fresh water change, the water cycle. There is less and less fresh water available for our use. The water doesn't get lost, just gets polluted or becomes unavailable. Ocean acidification, aerosol in the atmosphere. Ozone, which is the only one that looks actually good. We have been able to do something about it because it was a very specific thing. Okay, so there is novel entities, which you have here. It is the worst. That is the one we have exceeded the most. That is the one that concerns plastics and the chemicals that we use in them. That is the worst. It's worse than climate change. So yes, we should be really scared. So turns out that plastic and chemical pollution are a threat to humanity, greater than climate change. We are drowning in plastics. And how did we get there or here? Well, we all know it. We all just know it. It's our lifestyles, and it is led by the plastics industry, by the petrochemical industry, by the fossil fuel companies. The climate integrity, the Center for Climate Integrity has a wonderful website that I recommend that you look into. And it's quite basic. They knew, scientists and executives at the fossil fuel companies knew more than 50 years ago that this would be bad. They lied. They decided to prioritize their profits. And they are still lying because they still think that that is more important than life, for example, or the future of humanity. They knew that PFAS were dangerous way back in the 70s. By 1970, they knew that PFAS were toxic and they kept using them. I've had Teflon frying pans. What they decided to do was suppress any unfavorable research and distort the public discourse. And they went after the researchers who were studying all these things, like Rachel Carson, for example. They followed the playbook of the tobacco, pharmaceutical, and other industries, right? They tried everything to discredit the research that was and suppress the research that was coming out. As we know in the States, big oil has bought the election, basically, in my book, and the Republicans turned the whole thing into just a funny meme. But this is very serious, and not only in the U.S. and this is the intergovernmental another word I have problems with, Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution, the Plastics Treaty by the UN. It met on the fourth session met in last year in Canada, and the fifth at the end of last year in South Korea. And well, the plastics industry was the number one lobbyist at present at the Plastics Treaty. So no wonder that they failed. They tried to curb the use of plastics, and we need to do it globally, because one country doing something on its own is not going to achieve anything. So I have a few more slides in which, well, we can see how they have influenced our lives. So Cancer Organization shares lobbyists with fossil fuel companies. This was published last year. The American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network shares 21 lobbyists with 21 fossil fuel companies in 10 different states in the US. These were people who were advocating for both the fossil fuel industry and the Cancer Society Action Network. How can that be? Also, they have infiltrated higher ed. There are entire schools across the US funded by the fossil fuel industry who will publish papers that go against their interests. And we reached the second part of our talk, which is recycling. Recycling is another part of our another element in their strategy to get us all confused and to keep us using plastic. I'm not sure if you all know Keep America Beautiful. The younger generations have not heard of it. And also, I'm not sure, I have a video clip. I'm not sure you can hear it. Let me know if you can hear it. If not, I'll just skip it. Can you hear it?
Yes, we can hear it.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
This is a really interesting ad that they put out in the 70s to counter all the pushback that I mentioned earlier. There are all kinds of things that are wrong and offend us now, but basically they started this campaign. It's an anti-littering campaign. Pollution is not, I guess, presumably not all those factories in the background. It's the people who throw their trash. And so it's the people who can do something about it. It's not industry. And we bought it. Many people think that Keep America Beautiful, which still exists, is an environmental organization. It was actually created and funded by the fossil fuel industry. So this symbol has been used to confuse us tremendously. It doesn't mean that an object has been recycled, that it can be easily recycled, or that it will be recycled if you put it in the appropriate container. I started this talk actually here at this point over a year ago when I came to Spain and I realized that people were obsessing over whether to throw this piece of plastic in the yellow container or not. And it was just the wrong question because it truly does not matter. So as you will see, let's move on. What it means is that the object they put it on could be recycled if it is free from impurities, meaning you've washed it, rinsed it, there's no grease, there is no other crap on it. If there are facilities that can recycle it and it makes money and it makes sense economically, which is really nearly impossible. Let's go through a bit of history. The symbol was created by Gary Anderson, a young student who came up with the 3 chasing arrows for this contest that was established by a company that was making recycled cardboard, had nothing to do with plastic. So he won, and then right that year was the first Earth Day, and we're doing this talk because it is Earth Month. And that's when it became popular. But we have to keep in mind that it's not a trademark, it's not an official logo, and anybody can use it to mean whatever they want. And in fact, in 1988, a group decided, funded by the fossil fuel industry, decided that they were going to use it to confuse people. And if you ask anyone what the 3 chasing arrows means, everybody will tell you a different thing. And this is by design. They were very successful. They wanted to confuse people because if you don't know the truth, then you can't really act. You can't really make decisions for yourself. So what is the purpose of plastic recycling? Keeping in mind that plastic was designed to be discarded and not recycled. They never gave a second thought to what would happen once your cup was no longer needed. It's not a strategy to reduce plastic waste. It was conceived by the fossil fuel industry when they realized that there was so much pushback that they decided they needed to do something about it. Let's come up, you don't have to throw it away, right? But at the same time, it shifted the responsibility to individuals. And I have been guilty of berating people for not recycling in the past. In fact, I started recycling back in 1988 when I became aware of the problems that we were causing to our planet. And that is a perfect strategy of divide and conquer, right? We are just fighting over why you are not a good citizen and what you should be doing better when really we are powerless. It was also a strategy to divert waste management costs to municipalities because they're not factored into the production of plastic. We pay our taxes so that the different cities, towns make some sort of arrangement, pay some company. Every town is different here in Spain and also in the States. And so we are paying for this last step that plastic needs to go through. And it's just a way to keep making more and more plastics. So recycling
plastics, okay, plastics, recycling everything else I'm in favor of completely. Recycling plastic is a fraud. So how many types of plastics are there? In Spain, most people have no idea. And there are actually hundreds of different types of plastics, but these people put themselves in charge of the hen house, and they decided to simplify things to help the public identify plastics, and they came up with these 7, right? You may have seen them on different objects. In Spain, it's not so common. In the US, you see it more often. So there aren't 7 types of plastics. There are 6 identified types of plastics, and then there are others, number 7. And we're going to go through some of them so you see. These 2 are numbers 1 and 2 are used for food, and number 2 for many plastic bags. Number 3, the one that remember is carcinogenic, is PVC, is used for pipes. Actually, hopefully not for the pipes that bring water to your drinking water, to your faucet. Credit cards, toys. Many toys are made out of PVC. Toys that we give our children, that we give our pets, that they chew on, for example. Number 4, many blacks. Oh, yes, a question.
Oh, no, I'm just horrified.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, yes, we should all be horrified, sorry. Number 5 is one of the more stable types of plastics, and they're used a lot for food, to contain food. And number 6 is, remember, carcinogenic, used for styrofoam, different types. You wouldn't know that those solo cups and yogurt containers are the same type of plastic, polystyrene, as the foamy ones, or the back of the mirror, right? The reflecting part of the mirror. Number 7 is, well, anything that I have not shown you yet, but I want to call a special attention to bioplastics, or you may have heard of compostable plastics. These bioplastics are made not out of fossil fuels. They're not made out of oil, but they're made out of soy maybe, or corn maybe. So they're organic, right? They have a bio beginning, but so does fuel. I mean, fossil fuels come from organic matter. They are dinosaurs and algae, and coal is old wood, right? So it's not the material that you use, it's the process you put this material through that makes it dangerous. So do not trust bioplastics. Can they all be recycled? All these different types? Well, the quick answer is no. Numbers 1 and 2 are the ones that can be systematically recycled, but not necessarily. Numbers 4 and 5 could be. I was actually involved. I started a group in Roanoke, Virginia, where I lived for 3 years, where we collected number 5 polypropylene plastic, and it became a huge event. That group now has about 1,000 people on Facebook, and we did these monthly recycling events where people would collect their PP plastic and bring it to us, and we would ship it off to this company in New York State, I believe. But after COVID, they closed. Well, during COVID, they closed and they never reopened. And then PVC, polystyrene, and all the other plastics, they are simply not recyclable, period. That's just it. Let's make sure that we know what recycling is, because many people get confused between recycling, reusing, restructuring, whatever. You need to mechanically or chemically process something in order to obtain the same type of material. Otherwise, it's not recycling. It has to have the same quality, and it has to have the same properties, which in the case of plastic is just not possible. And be careful if you hear about advanced recycling, pyrolysis, or chemical recycling. This is just greenwashing. This is basically burning plastic in order to either make some sort of lower quality plastic or fuel to use it as fuel. That's not recycling. We don't recycle plastic. We downcycle plastic. So what are the problems associated with recycling now in quotation marks, now that we know that it's not real? So most plastic is not free from impurities. Just refer to the photo. Each type has a different recycling process. You can't just get numbers 1 and 2 together and come up with what kind of plastic. You just can't. You have to separate them. And if you are in Spain, you know that you put everything in the yellow bin, right? So all kinds of plastic. In the US, when I first moved there in 92, we used to separate numbers 1 and 2. Then China decided that, oh, we're going to take all your trash. And then we were all so happy because we could just throw all kinds of plastic in the bin and they would take them away and we would be guilt-free. Additionally, plastic can only be recycled once. You can't just recycle some plastic ad infinitum like you could metal or glass, for example. There's always a loss in metal and glass, but basically you can do it. And with plastic, once you recycle plastic once, the quality of that plastic degrades so much that it is useless. Also, recycled for that reason, recycled plastic is not as versatile. Also, you need to add a certain amount of virgin plastic. So if you come across this bottle that I've seen here in Spain that says 100% recycled, made out of other different bottles, that's just a lie. It's greenwashing. It's impossible. They can't produce good quality plastic from recycled plastic. They have to use some virgin plastic. Additionally, recycled plastic has more additives than virgin plastic because there are so many impurities, because it has to be further processed than virgin plastic. So if you have the choice of getting a recycled plastic or a virgin plastic, go for the virgin. Don't use the recycled plastic. Same thing goes with to the clothes. Don't buy clothes that are made out of recycled plastics unless you want to breathe plastic fibers. Additionally, recycling has a high carbon footprint because you need to transport it, you need to sort it, you need to process it, etc., etc. It has a negative impact on the people who manage the plastic and work in the facilities. It has a negative impact on the environment. And recycling plastic is simply more expensive than making virgin plastic. They lied. This came out last year. Recycling has never been technically or economically feasible, and they've known this for more than 30 years. And now we have the evidence. They have just hidden it so that we just keep consuming plastic. So okay, so maybe we should go for the numbers. How much plastic actually gets recycled? This is the latest data that I have been able to find. Data about all these things are notoriously difficult to come by. But so here's this from the year 2019, and I've highlighted or I've put in red the numbers for the US. 4% recycled, much worse than Europe. Worldwide, 9% of all plastic is recycled. In the US, most of the plastic ends up landfilled, with all the problems that are associated with landfilling. The last category, mismanaged or uncollected, is kind of a vague one. It could be lost in the environment or sent off to Turkey or Bulgaria or some country far away from us where we don't get to see it. And this staggering figure is that of all the plastic produced since the 50s, only 9% has been recycled. Recycling doesn't work. Recycling doesn't help. It's a fraud. and we need to stop doing some things different. I'm including this here about Ecoembes. It's in Spanish. They do have, this is on their website. As you can see, they have an English and a Spanish version. So 60% of their investors are embajadores. The people, and they give you the list. Let's take a look at them. For example, Coca-Cola, Danone, Danone, Nestle, Unilever, Pepsi, Campofrio, Procter & Gamble. These people fund Ecoembes to the tune of 60%. These people who benefit from selling plastic, do you really think it's in their interest to fix this problem? It's not. How can we fix this? The solutions exist. They're very simple. We all know them. We all know them. We need to move from a linear economy into a circular economy, and we are aware of this. We are aware of all those other R's: reduce, repair, reuse, refuse, recover, regulate, recycle, everything else but plastic. Stop producing plastic. That's simple. Who will lead the change? Will governments lead the change? Obviously not, because politicians are not leaders, they're followers. They do what they think they can do, get away with, and they have a very near-term vision for years at most, 2 years maybe. And so they don't care. They don't care about this. We need to have a long-term plan. Will the industry? Obviously not, because they have no financial interest in changing things. So it's just us, local heroes. We need to change the narrative, and we need to change the reality. By changing the narrative, we can change the reality. So how? Okay, everything counts. At a personal level, this group is obviously the Democrats. You are politically active, but I'm preaching to the choir. But let's go through this. This is my standard presentation. At a personal level, you can change your personal habits, because it's a good thing. If people see that you change, they may be inspired or to change or ask questions. You need to stay informed. There are many sources. I'm including 3-4 here, they have lots of information. The Story of Stuff project has lots of videos and activities, and you can download, and they're all for free. Beyond Plastics, obviously, they have speakers. I'm one of them, although I'm not doing this talk through them. I have been doing this talk actually kind of in a parallel universe from them. I've only done one for them. So that's at your personal level, you can change certain things. At the local level, you can share this information with everyone. Each one of you is important. Share this information with your family, your friends, your networks, your associations, and do not just say things, but change the way you do things. Like if you have a meeting, don't bring bottled water, for example. When the previous time I gave this talk for here in Seville, it was also in English. The venue where I was giving the talk gave me a bottle of water to drink from. I had my own water, so I didn't have to use it. We can affect the economy. We can request changes from shops and businesses. I go many places locally and I say, can you please just give me like ham, for example? I don't eat meat either, but my husband does. So I go to this store and I bring my own container and say, can you please put the ham in here? Or you can start campaigns, get together with people and start campaigns. Getting together is very important. Become involved in environmental organizations that may not have a specific plastic focus, but it is good to associate with the right people and maybe make them aware, because I think there's a lot of ignorance about the problem that plastic has become. Obviously, the most important one is at the regional, national, or international level. we need to be, I'm preaching to the choir, we need to be politically active at all levels because we need to change the laws. Changes, little changes here and there will not affect our exposure to plastics. So we need to go for the top at whatever level we can reach. There are things that can be changed fairly easily if, for example, we go for laws changes that reduce the amount of single-use plastic, because of all the waste produced yearly, 50% is single-use plastic. Bottles, for example, water bottles. Or just go to the grocery store. Anything that you buy there that is in plastic, I was going to say involved in plastic, that is wrapped in plastic, it's going to be thrown away, right? And well, let's change that. We don't want that. 40% is packaging. You order something, it comes wrapped in some sort of plastic thing unnecessarily. Your TV comes in styrofoam. Why? It could come in, I don't know, cardboard. There are some industries are changing their uses. And every minute the world discards 1 million plastic bags. Plastic bag bans work if they are correct. There is some sort of a plastic diluted, not ban regulation here in Spain that has not done a single thing. I still go to the store and everybody offers me, not like the grocery store, but other stores offer plastic bags all the time, all the time. Here's this little tidbit. The UK and Spain in Europe rely on plastic wrapped food more than any other country. 70% for the UK, it's 67% for Spain. We in Spain produce, well, we are an agricultural country. We have fish, we have meat. We produce all of this, and yet we wrap it all in plastic. It should be fairly easy. Of course, we should try to make things local, like shop locally, that will reduce the amount of plastic that we use. We can also go after the big polluters. We can try to convince governments that to change certain things so that the big companies that are the ones responsible for most of the pollution are changed the way they do things. So some of the names that I mentioned for Ecoembes, Danone, Nestle, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, they are responsible for 60% for most of the world. I'm sorry, for half of the world's plastic pollution. So there are laws that could change the responsibility of the plastic makers, the extended producer responsibility. There are many bills in the US. Beyond Plastics is sponsoring many of them. Not all of them are created equal. There are different, if you really want to become involved in this kind of stuff, you need to join the Beyond Plastics, because they have guidelines on how to make a good bill. Instead of giving tax incentives, we should tax polymer production. And there are many lawsuits. Some of them are successful, some of them are not, but I think all of them count because, as I said, we need to change the narrative. Even if we don't succeed in one specific bill or lawsuit or whatever, we are changing the narrative, and that's what we need to do. So major takeaways from this talk. There isn't much you can do to protect yourself from plastic, basically. I mean, you can change your habits and try to use less plastic, expose yourself to less plastic. But in the end, we're going to have to change things at the systemic level, at the global level, national and international agreements. And for that, we need to group together, work together to change things. So I usually like to end on a positive note. This from Margaret Mead, which is making the rounds in all the plastic stocks. Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have. And I show you a photo of volunteers who decided back in 2024, last year, when there was that major tanker spill that dumped all those pellets in Galicia, and the government, the local government was like just, shilly-shallying. These people decided to just go out there and start looking for pellets, which are nearly impossible to find. This is my last slide, although I have included a few more with links to Beyond Plastics, the missions, different aspects of Beyond Plastics, which is all in a PDF that I have shared with Helen. We need you. They do trainings. I have done a training and or several training, and they have fact sheets, all kinds of information, tools that you can use, legislation, all the stuff that I told you about, and the speaking requests. That's where you can actually ask me to talk to anybody who is let's see, am I sharing? Let's stop sharing here. Anybody who wants to hear this talk, I'll be glad to give it to. I have no issues. I have nothing else to do with my life than spread this message, this jovial message. And that's it. So, wow, that was a long talk. Sorry. I got some PFAS laden water.
Thank you. That was, I want to say it was great, but it was kind of depressing.
It is very depressing.
Yeah, are you taking questions?
Yes.
For me, the most important thing to ask is, if it's useless to recycle plastic, what should we do with the plastics that we have that we need to dispose of in some way?
This is what I do. I put in the recycling bin plastics numbers 1 and 2 and I rinse them actually before I put them there, with no hope that it will get recycled. And I guess this is the inertia from many years of recycling and the fact that I feel guilty about using plastic, but don't throw it away. Don't feel bad, especially don't antagonize your family or anybody who doesn't recycle, because you're poisoning a precious relationship. You need to get together with those people and fight for a change. Recycling won't change anything. It's the other fight that will change things. So don't sweat it, basically. Sadly, I have my issues. I feel guilty all the time, but I've decided that I don't care. I can't care.
Okay. Question here in Barcelona.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I was in Berlin, Germany in 2016, and they have a system there where you bring back your plastics, you put them in a machine, you get 5 cents back. And then they turn it into the same thing that it was, like, so it's the cans go in a separate place from the plastics, and presumably that works better because they don't break up the plastics, they wash them and they use them again for Coca-Cola or whatever it is that you brought in, and that seemed like a more rational system, and there was some resistance to implanting that system in Spain by the plastics companies here in Spain. So I was wondering if you've looked into that or have any opinion about that system.
Reusing the plastic?
Well, the system that collects them in a way that separates them so they go back to the original use, like if it's they don't break, like here we throw everything out, that's all broken together or put together, so then you say it has to be clean, and then it's just reused. They don't break that down like plastic, they clean it and then reuse it supposedly.
I would not drink out of a reused plastic bottle. Plastic degrades, period. It degrades, and you, once it starts breaking down, you ingest it. And I'll give you an example. Okay, so to answer your question more directly, I have not looked into this, but I would be very skeptical about it working for this reason. Now, if they take it, melt it down and make a different bottle, then maybe, but then again, there's always the issue of recycling that is problematic. It is problematic everywhere. I don't know if in Germany they have a better system. I haven't looked into it. What I know is that I would not drink out of or eat out of a recycled plastic for sure. And here's an example of something that just happened to me for 2 years. I had to wear braces to do something in my mouth, and then they gave me a mouth guard to wear very recently, last year, at night. And so I wore it religiously, and I thought it's made out of plastic, but okay, whatever. So I was feeling very good about myself until I realized that it was degrading. This plastic that I was putting in my mouth after months was starting to degrade. There were rough spots. I stopped. I'd rather have bad teeth, which I think I don't, and I don't think I will have a problem. Then have that exposure to that plastic that probably I'm swallowing. If at night, I'm just like going like this, and oh gosh. So plastic degrades. Don't trust any plastic for anything that you're going to put in your body. I wouldn't do it.
I will say, Celeste, it's interesting what you say about national legislation, because there's a store here that I really like. It's independently owned. I love the owner. And he tried to give me something in a plastic bag. And I said, I don't want plastic. Give me a paper bag. And he said, okay, I'll give you a paper bag. They should just ban plastic bags. Because if they ban plastic bags, I would be able to give you to it in paper, but they won't allow me to otherwise. And so I think there would be support.
I think so. I think we need to educate the people in the fact that we do have agency. We're not powerless. I mean, we can, our leaders, our politicians will do what we want them to do if we express this desire. Well, if there's a huge change,
Right.
I think
Yeah, you have
it
to.
has to be a huge change. Otherwise, they won't. Yeah, and well, their legislation sometimes hurts us. For example, organic bananas, organic produce in Europe sometimes comes wrapped in bags, plastic bags, because they have to be separated from non-organic so that they don't get polluted. What? Well, so you're polluting them with the plastic. Or bananas that come wrapped in plastic when bananas already have their own wrapping. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, I think that we need to change the laws. And I think that little by little, people are realizing that this is the way to go. It's not pretty, it's not easy, it's not going to be right away. We like switches, right? We want to switch something on and have a result. And this is a marathon that we need to run together. So yeah.